Welcome back to another class on Dalet Amot shel halacha. En lo lakadosh baruch hu be'olamum ela arba amot shel halacha bilvad. This is a continuation from the previous class from part 28. Today's class will be part 28b. After seeing in the previous class the machlok between the Geonim and Rabbeinu Tam, that according to the Geonim, immediately after sunset, that's when twilight period begins. And according to Rabbeinu Tam, not after the first sunset does the twilight period begin, but rather after the second sunset. And we explained that if you want to know the time from Rabbeinu Tam, when it's going to be night, it's 72 minutes after the first sunset. Comes Rav David Yosef Shlita and he continues and he says, V'katvu Rabbeinu poskim. The rabbis that make a Pesach halacha, they wrote, שזמן צאת שלוש הכוכבים בינוניים שווה לשיעור הזמן שאמרו בגמרא לעניין מהלך המילין באדם בינוני. Now, we have to remember that we spoke about in the previous classes, how does one know when the three stars come out? Because that is one of the ways to know when the stars come out, is when you see three stars. But what kind of three stars did we say? We explained that it cannot be big stars that you could see even during the day. It can't be small stars that are only seeable at night. It has to be average stars. Now we'll see today it's really hard to say what is an average star, what's not an average star. So therefore comes Rav David Yosef Shlita and he says in the name of other poskim, and he explains, how are you going to know that the stars in the sky, how are you going to know if they're average or not? So he says, and he goes like this, that these three stars, these three average stars are equal to exactly the time that the twilight period takes. So according to the Geonim, if at 6 p.m. is sunset, 13 and a half minutes later, it's when the stars come out. When it's 6 p.m., 13 minutes, 30 seconds, when you look up, if you see stars, you should know those are the average stars at this time. We equal the average star since we don't know what an average star looks like. So we're going to go, once it's 6:13, basically round it off to 6:15 because it has to be seasonal minutes also. So once it's 6:15 and you look up and you see stars, you should know that's considered to be average stars. That is in the world of the Geonim. However, in the world of Rabbeinu Tam, at 7:12, when you look up into the sky and you see stars, those are the stars that were considered to be called average stars. So this is what he tells us over here. Uledata Geonim, according to the opinion of the Geonim, Shalosh 13 and a half minutes after sunset, Shehu Shur Mehalach Adam Beduni Shalosh Rev'i Mil, which is an average, which is a measurement, or better yet, which is a duration of an average person walking 3/4 of a meal, which is, like we explained, 13 and a half minutes. That is the time when three average stars come out. And according to the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam, when are we going to know that the average stars come out? 72 minutes after the first sunset. Which is the average of, which is the duration, which is the duration of an average person walking for a meal. Now you might ask yourself a question, 1 second. Didn't we say it was 3 meal and a quarter? So how did we get to 4 meal? What just happened? He just said, Rav David Yosef Shlita just said, that 4 meal of an average person walking, which is 72 minutes. So from 72 minutes later, it's going to be 7:12. But I don't get it. But don't we have 3 meal and a quarter of a meal? So how did he get to 4 meal? Very simple. You guys have to remember that 3 meal and a quarter of a meal is from the first sunset to the second sunset. But then we have another 13 and a half minutes, which is basically 0.75, which is 3/4 of a meal. If you take 3/4 of a meal times 18, you're going to get 13 and a half minutes. That's how we get our period of Ben Hashmashot. So it comes out, really you have 4 meal. How? 3 meal a quarter of a meal, and 3/4 of a meal, so you got yourself one full meal. That's what Rav David Yosef Shlita is telling us. An average person that it takes him to walk for a meal is 72 minutes. That's exactly how we're going to know when the average stars comes out after the first sunset. That is the time when the three average stars come out. So before we do continue, let's just review this one more time. According to the Geonim, 6 p.m. is sunset, 13 and a half minutes is twilight, after that is when the stars come out. The way we understand Rav David Yosef, that's when you're able to tell when the average stars are outside in the sky. According to Rabbeinu Tam, since he learns that there's first sunset and second sunset, and after the second sunset, that's when it begins now the twilight period, which is 13 and a half minutes later, that's when we say the stars come out, the average stars. So it comes out over here, according to the Geonim, 13 and a half minutes later is when the stars come out. According to Rabbeinu Tam, 72 minutes later after the first sunset, which is in our case 6 p.m., it will be 7:12. That's when the average stars come out. However, continues Rav David Yosef Shutan, he says like this, Umikol makom, nevertheless, katvu rabim merabotena poskim. Many rabbis that make psak halacha, they wrote, she'en lesmoch al riyat einenu sheyotzim sholosha kechovim binonim. One should not rely on his eyesight when he sees three average stars. Why? Because you need to be a great expert in order to be able to know just by seeing them that those stars are average stars. And furthermore, furthermore, when you're dealing with three average stars, they're not equal to every single person. I might see the stars bigger, you might see it smaller, and so on and so forth. So therefore, you're never going to be able to tell what's considered to be an average star. Some people have a better eye vision, and they're able to see quickly the stars. And some people are short of vision, and they're only going to see later the stars. Even the one that has good vision, אפשר is possible, maybe you're not going to begin to see it immediately when it's beginning to appear in the heaven, in the sky. Why? Because you're not looking at the place where they're actually visible. Basically, Rav David Yosef Shlita is telling us, do not rely on our own vision when it comes to looking into the sky, when it comes to the three average stars, but rather rely on the opinion of the Geonim in the Geonim world, or Rabbeinu Tam in the world of Rabbeinu Tam, that at this time, at 6:13 and 30 seconds, if you look up, that's exactly when the three average stars appear. In the world of Rabbeinu Tam, it's at 7 p.m. and 12 minutes. Now, Rabotai, we have over here something fascinating. After we saw in the previous class that majority of the Rishonim and the Shulchan Aruch and a lot of Achronim agree with Rabbeinu Tam, what are we going to hold? Are we going to hold like the Geonim, or are we going to hold like Rabbeinu Tam? Comes Rav David Yosef and he wants to answer that question. Ule'inyan halacha. And in regards to halacha, b'machloket Rabbeinu Tam v'ha-Geonim, in the argument between Rabbeinu Tam and the Geonim, nidba'er le'el b'halacha b'ruach chelek yudalet. It's explained above in the halacha b'ruach on chelek, on the portion 14, ba'akdama l'siman reis samach aleph, seifim tet and yud. It's explained over there in Siman 261, halacha 9 and 10. Shamnam dat Maran Shulchan Aruch kishitid Rabbeinu Tam. You're right that the opinion of Maran, the Shulchan Aruch, is like the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam. Ben lahakel or ben lahachmir. Whether one wants to be lenient or whether one wants to be stringent. Now, I need to explain this concept. What does it mean, one who wants to be lenient and one who wants to be stringent? So I'll explain to you like this right now because it's very, very important. Rabotai, Shulchan Aruch made a Pesach halacha, you could be lenient or stringent when it comes to Rabbeinu Tam. Right, so you could be lahachmir versus lahakel. What does it mean to be stringent versus to be lenient in the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam? What does that mean? Again, the Shulchan Aruch made Pesach halacha. You can follow Rabbeinu Tam whether you want to be stringent, whether you want to be lenient. What does it mean, stringent or lenient? So I'm going to explain to you like this. Let's say, for argument's sake, sunset is at 6 p.m. According to the Geonim, when does Shabbat come in? We know 18 minutes beforehand we light the candles, but technically Shabbat comes in at 6 p.m. once the sun sets. This is the opinion of the Geonim. Comes the Shulchan Aruch and he tells you in the opinion in the world of Rabbeinu Tam, if you want to be lenient, you could be lenient like Rabbeinu Tam. What is that going to mean? What does that mean if I want to be lenient like Rabbeinu Tam? Very simple. If this is the opinion of the Geonim, according to Rabbeinu Tam, we know you have 72 minutes after 6 p.m. You have 72 minutes after 6 p.m., which is going to give me 7:12. Here we go. Comes the Shulchan Aruch and he says, if you want to be lenient like Rabbeinu Tam, you could be lenient. You know what that means? That means according to Rabbeinu Tam, if 72 minutes is nightfall, go back 13 and a half minutes because we have to be still taking into consideration the 13 and a half minutes when it comes to Ben Hashmashot. So give me at 6:58 and 30 minutes, right? Because this period is twilight, this is night, and this is the second sunset. Right, like we saw over there. Comes the Shulchan Aruch and says, you want to be lenient or Rabbeinu Tam, you could be lenient. What does that mean? If everybody wants to take in Shabbat, they want to be stringent, and they want to take in Shabbat like the pin of the Geonim at 6 p.m., be my guest, you could do it. But if you want to be lenient and take in Shabbat at 6:58 and 30 seconds, according to the Shulchan Aruch, he says, be my guest. Rabotai, you have almost an hour after everybody else accepted Shabbat. I'll tell you, one time I'm not sure if it was Monsey or Borough Park. I can't recall right now. I went one time to Monsey or Borough Park. I cannot recall which place it was. I'm talking about maybe at least 20 years ago. And we were already coming out of shul. I think more Borough Park because I was with my brother-in-law, my sister's husband. I think it was Borough Park. And we saw a guy smoking again. I didn't know, listen, you don't know the halacha like you know now. Back then, and I saw a guy smoking on Shabbat, Strimel and a beard and peyais, and he's smoking. I said, what's this? He says, do you know anything about Rabbeinu Tam? I said, honestly, I didn't know back then, I didn't know anything about Rabbeinu Tam. But you have, and that's a very big problem, you do have some people that they hold Rabbeinu Tam in all scenarios to be stringent, to be lenient. They'll even take in Shabbat 6:58. When you are already after Mincha Aravit and you're already eating your meal on Shabbat, they still did not take in Shabbat. So this is what it means. Whenever you see the language of to be lenient in Rabbeinu Tam, that means if one wants to go ahead and take in Shabbat later, that's called being lenient. What is called to be stringent? Let's say if Shabbat is at 6 p.m., Shabbat comes in at 6 p.m. Okay, let's say, let's make it like this. Let's say let's not do that. One second. Okay. Let's say 5:42 is candle lighting. right? 18 minutes before 6 o'clock. Then at 6 p.m. is when sunset hits. So when does Shabbat really come out? Shabbat always comes out after candle lighting, 1 hour after candle lighting, which is going to give me 6:42. By Rabbeinu Tam, it's more or less 30 minutes after 6:42. So what happens over here now, according to the Geonim, Shabbat is already out at 6:42. But according to Rabbeinu Tam, you're going to add another 18 minutes, which is going to give me till 7 o'clock. And then another 13 and a half minutes, which is going to give me about 7:13, 7:12, something like that. Let's just say, let's just keep it to 7:15. According to Rabbeinu Tam, Shabbat comes out at 7:15. Now, Rabotai, I want to just show you something fascinating. If you want to be lenient over here in accepting Shabbat late, and if you want to be stringent over here in taking out Shabbat, that's being stringent. Because the one that takes out Shabbat at 6:42 is being lenient. By taking out Shabbat 30 minutes later, basically, you're being stringent. So comes the Shulchan Aruch and he says, listen, you want to be stringent? Be my guest. You want to be lenient? Be my guest. This is the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch. I want to read the language one more time. Shamnam dat maran Shulchan Aruch kishitat Rabbeinu Tam ben lahaker uben lahachmir. Right? When the opinion of Maran the Shulchan Aruch, he's going to go like the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam, whether it comes to leniencies or whether it comes to stringencies. You know, I should maybe clarify this. Okay. I should maybe clarify this. One more time. I think I'm not clear. All right. I'm not saying right now that you're able to go pick and choose. What do I mean? I'm not saying right now that, you're going to say, no, Rabbi, I'll take in Shabbat 6:58 because I want to be lenient today like Rabbeinu Tam. Right? I didn't make it on time from work. I'll be lenient over here and then I'll be lenient over here. That I'm not saying. No. What the Shulchan Aruch is saying is that when it comes to the laws of Rabbeinu Tam, when it comes to the time of Rabbeinu Tam, whether it comes to the laws of leniencies, whether it comes to the laws of stringencies, you have to keep both of them. You can't pick and choose. Right? You can't. That's according to Shulchan Aruch. But we know today that if you go like the opinion of the Geonim, let's say you want to take the Shabbat at 6 o'clock, and you want to hold like Rabbeinu Tam to be stringent, you can be stringent. That you can do. But to be lenient over here and to be lenient over here, that we're not going to allow you. If you're lenient over here, we're going to tell you have to also be stringent over there. All right, so let me make that clear one more time. Shamnam dat Maran Shulchan Aruch kishit Rabbeinu Tam, even though the opinion of Maran the Shulchan Aruch is like the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam, ben lahaker u ben lahachmir, whether it comes to leniencies, whether it comes to stringencies, he says you should follow Rabbeinu Tam. Nevertheless, here we go. Halacha rabotai. Or better yet, minhag. It's actually a custom, what we do today when we follow the Geonim. It's not halacha, it's a custom. And custom is Torah. Doesn't mean don't overlook it. Ulam, however, bismanenu nowadays, minhag kol Yisrael, the custom of all the Jewish people, bechol mekomod moshavtachem, in all the places where they reside, le'inyan erev Shabbat kedat haGeonim. When it comes to the matter of erev Shabbat on Friday night, before Shabbat kicks in, everybody's going to go like the opinion of the Geonim. They're going to accept Shabbat at 6 p.m. or candle lighting with 5:42, doesn't matter, but they're going to accept Shabbat at sunset. ומקבלים עליהם שבת קודם שקיעת החמה בעוד השמש על הארץ. And they accept upon themselves Shabbat before the sun sets, while the sun is still on the land. ובוודאי שכן יש להורות לעניין ערב שבת. He says, for sure one should paskin like this when it comes to Erev Shabbat. When it comes to the eve of Shabbat, you want to tell people to go with the time of the Geonim. She'asur la'asot malacha acher shkid hakma. It is forbidden for one to do work after sunset. V'tzarich lekabel alav Shabbat be'od hashemesh al haaretz. And you have to accept upon yourself the Shabbat while the sun is on the world, meaning on the land. That's what we do, Rabotai. That's technically what we do. Let me just erase this for a second. All right, so we could erase this right now also. Comes Rabbeinu. All right, we could erase this also. Comes Rav David Yosef Shultan, he says like this. If candle lighting is 5:42, 18 minutes later is going to give me 6 p.m. This is the eve of Shabbat. He says, right, we have a mitzvah also to accept upon ourselves Shabbat earlier while the sun is still out. He says that when it comes to teaching other people halachot, you have to tell people to accept Shabbat already by 5:42. They have extra 18 minutes to play with, no problem. But when it comes to down like to 5:58, 5:59, that you shouldn't take chances. A lot of times, women especially, they light the candle mamish by 5:58, 5:59. The problem is if you have 6 children in the house, or you have 10 children in the house, or you're lighting 20 candles, you ain't making it 2 minutes because you have to wait until each one catches flame. So that's a problem. By then, she's ready 6 to 3. She thinks she's a tzaddikus. That's why you have to be very careful. If your wife cannot do it before, let's say, if she cannot do it at 5:55, the husband should light. The husband can also light. If she's in the shower, she's getting ready, or whatever the situation might be, let the husband can perfectly do it. Or if you have a daughter that's 12 years old, she can do it. If you have a boy that's 13 years old, he can do it. Anybody can almost light for the wife or for the mother. So it comes out of here like this. Comes Rav David Yosef Shlita, even though we learned this whole equation with the Geonim and Rabbeinu Tam, and the Shulchan Aruch holds like Rabbeinu Tam, nevertheless, and Shulchan Aruch paskins, we're going to paskin like Rabbeinu Tam, whether it comes to leniencies, whether it comes to stringencies. Nevertheless, comes Rav David Yosef Shlita, and he tells us when it comes to paskin halachot, that's what means lehorot, basically to teach, to paskin halachot. You're going to tell people to start accepting Shabbat at 5:42, 18 minutes always before sunset. They didn't get a chance to do it. You always have to accept Shabbat a little bit early because you want to be able to add from the Shabbat onto the mundane. In any event, Rabotai, this is what Rav David Yosef Shlita tells us. So one more time. Ulam bizmaneinu min hakol yishal bechol mekamot mishavotehem le'inyan erev Shabbat kedata geonim. The custom of all the Jewish people in all the places, when it comes to Erev Shabbat, is like the pin of the Geonim. Umikablim alahem Shabbat kodem shkid hachama beot Hashem al haaretz, and they accept upon themselves Shabbat before the sun sets, or while the sun is still out, meaning while the sun is still shining on the land. Ubevadai sheken yesh lehorod le'inyan Erev Shabbat. For sure, this is the one who wants to pass in halachot when it comes to Erev Shabbat. It is forbidden for one to do work after the sunset. If this is the time when the sun sets, after 6 o'clock, you could no longer do malakah. It is asur, because you have to remember, Rabotai, this twilight period is safik yom, safik laila. I don't know if this is day or this is night. It's the twilight period. Until it gets to 6, basically, let's just say 6:15. Until it gets to 6:15, I don't know if it's Safik Yom, Safik Laila. When you're dealing with Isurim from the Torah, like Michal Shabbat, we're going to be stringent. We're going to tell you it's night and it's forbidden for you to do any work. However, let's say if a person on a regular day, or even if he wants to daven Mincha on Erev Shabbat and he came late to Shul, since davening is only from the rabbis, we're going to tell you, since from the rabbis we're always lenient, we're going to tell you, assume that this is still day, you have another 15 minutes basically to be able to go ahead and daven mincha. Bottom line, we say over here, Rabotai, halacha lemaseh, we follow the Geonim, even though the Shulchan Aruch paskins otherwise. Continues Rav David Yosef Shlita, and he says like this now. Ulam le'inyan mochi Shabbat. Here we go. Very important point. Let's do the calculation one more time. 5:42. Let's say that's when this was when it was candle lighting. 6 o'clock. Let's say is when sunset. Okay. Now this is on Friday. This is Friday. This is on the eve of Friday, right? This is on Friday eve, basically. Erev Shabbat. This is Erev Shabbat. I like the Eve, English doesn't make sense. Friday Eve, okay, whatever. That's why I love Hebrew, Rabotai. Lashon HaKodesh. Anyway, an Erev Shabbat, let's do this. Let's erase this. I honestly, you guys don't understand how it bothers me, the English, because Erev Shabbat. This is Erev Shabbat. Now, Motzei Shabbat, what we're going to speak about now, you give yourself 1 hour, Motzei Shabbat, 1 hour after candle lighting, is 6:42. This is the opinion of the Geonim. Let's say another half an hour, about 7:13, 7:12, 7:15, let's just go with 7:15, is the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam. Let's see this very carefully. Right? According to, this is Motzei Shabbat. This is when Shabbat comes out. According to the Geonim, halachically you're allowed to take a Shabbat at 6:42. Somebody wants to be stringent, he can go like the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam. Now I want to show you something over like this. Let's see what he says over here. Okay. Say like this. Ulam le'ini Motzei Shabbat. However, when it comes to Motzei Shabbat, before we saw when it comes to Shabbat, and Erev Shabbat, now we're seeing when it comes to Motzei Shabbat. V'chen le'ini Motzei Yom HaKippurim or Motzei Yamim Tovim. And so when it comes to Motzei Yom HaKippur, after Yom Kippur, or after Yom Tov, once Yom Tov is finished, אף על פי שאף בזה מנהג ישראל בכל מקומות משבותיהם כשיטת הגאונים, even though okay, something, let's do this. Rabotai, I like to see everything. Motzei Shabbat, you have Motzei Shabbat, you have Motzei Yom Kippur, and also you have Motzei Yom Tov, right? I'm just writing it in short. So you have Motzei Shabbat, Motzei Yom Kippur, and Motzei Yom Tov. Even though the minhag of all the Jewish people, even though on Motzei Shabbat, Motzei Yom Kippur, and Motzei Yom Tov, the custom of all the Jewish people all around the world is to go like the opinion of the Geonim. Let's just say 6:42 is when Shabbat would come out, or when Yom Kippur would come out, or when Yom Tov would come out. He says over here, anybody who's not taking into consideration the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam, do not protest against him. Nevertheless, here we go. Nevertheless, since the opinion of majority of the Rishonim, the earlier rabbis, and Maran Shulchan Aruch, and the Achronim, a lot of Achronim, they hold like opinion of Rabbeinu Tam. And you have Achronim that they testified that they behaved in their places where they lived like Rabbeinu Tam. Lachen ra'ui v'nachon me'od. I want to be careful when I say this. I want to emphasize this. Lachen ra'ui v'nachon me'od. Therefore it is proper and correct, very proper, very much correct. L'chol yirei shamayim, to every God-fearing Jew, la'achmir b'motzei Shabbat v'yom HaKippurim v'yomim tovim k'shitat Rabbeinu Tam. Comes Rav David Yosef Shlita, even though the minhag is on Motzei Shabbat, Motzei Yom Kippur, Motzei Yom Tov, the minhag is 6:42, but since the Shulchan Aruch holds that we go like Rabbeinu Tam, and a lot of Rishonim hold we go like Rabbeinu Tam, and a lot of Achronim hold like we go like Rabbeinu Tam, and many Achronim testified that they went like Rabbeinu Tam in their places. Comes Rav David Yosef and he says, therefore it's very much proper to hold in Motzei Shabbat, Motzei Yom Tov, and Motzei Yom Kippur like Rabbeinu Tam. See, Rabotai, we don't use them when it comes to Shabbat. For Shabbat, I'm not going to tell you, right, when it comes to Shabbat, I'm not going to tell you you're allowed to accept Shabbat at 6:58 and 30 seconds. That I'm not going to tell you. Over there, over here we're stringent. But over here, Rabotai, if you want to be, over here we're stringent. And over here we're going to tell you should be stringent also. Because right now, if you're taking out Shabbat at 6:42, again, somebody who does it, it's fine. Nobody's going to protest against you because the Gonim say clearly Shabbat is out, Yom Kippur is out, Yom Tov is out. But the problem is the Shulchan Aruch, Rishonim, Achronim, all went with the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam. So according to them, you might be desecrating Shabbat. So that's why it comes from David Yosef. He says it's very much proper for every God-fearing Jew to hold Rabbeinu Tam. Now I want to show you something. When it comes to Yom Kippur, Chacham Ovadia says if you're not pregnant and you're not sick, meaning you still could continue holding the fast, you shouldn't take out the fast on Yom Kippur on 6:42. Let's say if that's where the fast ends. Why? Because you have the Shulchan Aruch says 7:15, Rishonim say 7:15, Achronim say 7:15, and it's the Oraita. So he will tell you should actually postpone the Yom Kippur fast until the time of Rabbeinu Tam. That's what he's telling us here. Lachen, therefore, Ra'ui v'nachon me'od. It's proper and it's very much correct. L'chol yirei shamayim, to every God-fearing Jew, lahachmir b'mot Shabbat v'yom Kippurim v'yomim tovim k'shit Rabbeinu Tam. To be stringent on Mot Shabbat and Yom Kippur and on Yomim Tovim, like the pin of Rabbeinu Tam, v'lo la'asot malacha, do not do any work, ad ka'avur 72 dakot mishkid hachama, until 72 minutes have passed from the first sunset. Ve'al parim, and nevertheless, ra'ui lahachmir bezeh b'melachot asur min haTorah. At the very least, if you cannot do in all malachot, at the very least, when it comes to malachot that are forbidden from the Torah, one should go ahead and be stringent and not do any malacha until the time of Rabbeinu Tam.